It was supposed to be another routine political debate, but from the moment the cameras went live, the tension was unmistakable. On one side of the stage sat Kash Patel, former Trump advisor and fierce defender of the MAGA agenda. On the other sat Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett, known for her fiery rhetoric and fearless confrontations. The moderator barely finished his opening question before Patel launched into a tirade that set the tone for what would become one of the most explosive live TV moments of the year. Congresswoman Crockett represents everything wrong with Washington today, Patel declared, his voice sharp, his finger jabbing the air for emphasis. She spends more time attacking President Trump than working for her constituents. She talks about democracy, but what she really wants is chaos. She doesn't respect tradition, she doesn't respect the law, and frankly, she doesn't belong on this stage. The studio audience shifted uncomfortably, a low murmur spreading through the crowd. The moderator attempted to intervene, but Patel pressed on, raising his voice over the noise. You sit here pretending to care about the American people while selling out to special interests. You claim to fight for justice, but all you do is smear those of us who actually put America first. Jasmine Crockett is nothing more than a loudmouth looking for attention, and it's time someone said it to her face. Gasps echoed through the audience as Patel leaned forward, his expression smug, clearly expecting Crockett to falter under the weight of his accusations. For a moment, the studio lights seemed to burn brighter, the tension thick enough to slice with a knife. Crockett sat still, her hands folded on the desk, her eyes locked on Patel. She didn't flinch, didn't interrupt. Her silence was deliberate, a calm before the storm. The camera zoomed in on Patel, his smirk widening as if he had landed the fatal blow. What he didn't realize, and what the audience was about to discover, was that Jasmine Crockett was not the kind of opponent who backed down. She was the kind of opponent who waited for the right moment to strike back. And when she did, it would leave the room and the nation in absolute shock. The moderator, sensing the debate slipping out of control, tried to pivot to the next question. But the studio had already become Patel's personal arena. He leaned across the table, cutting off the host, his voice booming through the microphones. The American people are tired of grandstanding, Jasmine. They're tired of your theatrics. You come here with your sound bites and your outrage, but you don't bring solutions. You bring noise, and tonight, I'm going to make sure everyone sees through you. Gasps rippled through the audience again. Patel's words carried an unmistakable edge, a mix of condescension and calculated insult. The camera captured his smirk, his eyes flicking toward the crowd as if daring them to disagree. A few claps echoed from his supporters, but the majority of the room sat in stunned silence, waiting for Crockett's response. Instead of answering, Jasmine calmly reached for her glass of water, took a slow sip, and set it back down. The tension ratcheted higher. Patel, sensing her restraint as weakness, doubled down. Look at her, folks. She can't even defend herself. She's out of her league. This is what happens when you put someone with no respect for tradition, no respect for power, in a seat she hasn't earned. She should be taking notes, not taking up airtime. That line drew audible groans from the audience, some even booing. The moderator raised a hand, but Patel ignored him, his voice dripping with disdain. You talk about justice, Jasmine, but justice doesn't need a loudmouth. It needs discipline, it needs order. And if you can't understand that, maybe you should step aside and let the adults handle the real work. The words hung in the air like a challenge. Viewers at home flooded social media in real time, hashtags like #Patel versus Crockett and #SitDownJasmine shooting up the trending charts. Commentators on Twitter typed furiously, some praising Patel's aggressiveness, others blasting his arrogance. The debate had transformed into a showdown, no longer about policies or platforms, but about dominance. The cameras cut to Jasmine Crockett. She was still silent, her gaze unwavering, her expression unreadable. The audience leaned forward, sensing that her response, when it finally came, would not just answer Patel, it would define the night. The moment the audience had been waiting for finally arrived. Jasmine Crockett leaned forward, adjusted her microphone, and let the silence linger for a beat too long, just enough to make Patel sweat under the studio lights. Then, with a calm but razor-sharp tone, she began. "Mr. Patel, I let you talk. I let you insult me. I let you lecture the American people like you're some kind of savior. And now it's my turn." The room fell dead silent. Even Patel's smirk faltered as she fixed him with a glare sharp enough to cut steel. "You want to call me a loudmouth? Fine. I will be loud if it means calling out hypocrisy. I will be loud if it means exposing corruption, and I will be loud enough to make sure America never forgets what you and your former boss really are. Frauds hiding behind flags and slogans." Gasps exploded from the crowd. Crockett pressed on, her voice growing stronger with each word. "You sit here pretending to represent tradition, but the only tradition you represent is bowing down to Donald Trump like a servant desperate for scraps. You call me unqualified? Kash, you built your career being a yes man, defending a man who incited chaos, broke trust, and left this country more divided than ever. That's not leadership, that's weakness." The audience erupted in applause, cheers echoing through the studio. Patel opened his mouth to respond, but Crockett cut him off with the line that would go viral before the debate even ended. "You don't get to tell me my place. I earned it. What you've earned is a permanent footnote in history as the man who sold his dignity for a pat on the head from Donald Trump." The crowd went wild. Standing ovations, whistles, the sound of disbelief turning into thunderous approval. Patel sat frozen, visibly rattled, his earlier confidence crumbling under the weight of her words. Social media detonated. Hashtags like #CrockettClapback, #PatelDestroyed, and #SavageComeback trended within minutes. Clips of Crockett's takedown spread across TikTok and Instagram, remixed with triumphant music and captions like, "This is how you shut down arrogance." For millions watching live, it wasn't just a rebuttal. It was a masterclass in control, power, and defiance. The kind of comeback that would be replayed for years as the night Jasmine Crockett turned the tables and left Kash Patel stunned on national television. By the time the debate ended, the clip of Jasmine Crockett's savage comeback had already gone viral. Within hours, it dominated every social media feed in America. On Twitter, X, the moment trended at #1 under #CrockettClapback. TikTok creators set her fiery line, "You don't get to tell me my place," to dramatic music, turning it into a battle cry that racked up millions of views overnight. Instagram Reels captured audience reactions in slow motion, zooming in on Patel's stunned face as Crockett delivered the knockout blow. Cable networks couldn't resist the spectacle. CNN played the exchange on a loop with the chyron, "Crockett destroys Patello on live TV." MSNBC hailed it as the mic drop moment of the year, while even Fox News struggled to spin Patel's performance. One Fox host admitted reluctantly, "Look, Kash didn't have an answer. She cornered him." The fallout stretched beyond television. Editorials in the Washington Post and the New York Times praised Crockett for turning arrogance into ashes. Conservative outlets tried to downplay the clash, but their headlines betrayed the truth. Patel had been rattled, and the nation saw it. Meanwhile, in Washington, Crockett's colleagues flooded her with praise. Progressive Democrats called her a rising star with fire in her veins. Even moderates admitted that her composure under attack had elevated her stature. Patel, on the other hand, found himself on the defensive. Late-night comedians roasted him mercilessly, dubbing him the man who brought a knife to a cannon fight. Outside the Beltway, ordinary Americans embraced the moment as symbolic. Protesters in several cities carried signs quoting Crockett's line, "I earned my place." College students remixed the clip into spoken-word poetry, while activists plastered her words on posters at rallies. It became more than a debate moment. It was a cultural flashpoint. Polls taken days later confirmed the shift. Crockett's national recognition soared, with young voters especially electrified by her unapologetic defiance. Patel's numbers, meanwhile, nosedived. What was meant to be his spotlight moment had turned into his undoing. By week's end, one thing was undeniable. Jasmine Crockett had not only stunned Kash Patel on live TV, she had claimed her place as one of the most powerful and unflinching voices in American politics.